Today we're taking a look at the Moza AirCross. This is a gimbal from Gudson. We saw this at NAB and it interested me because they have this remote that can control the gimbal from 50 meters away, and all you have to do is physically move the remote and it will mimic those movements onto the gimbal. So really cool. But let's take a look here. They sent over a backpack. The reason you may need a backpack is because there are some extra accessories that you could get optionally. So this is the one from Gimbal Guru here, but this does come in a hard case. But you see they sent over a dual handle setup over here. They also have an attachment to hold the remote onto the handle, and then they sent over a Panasonic dummy battery, so you can actually power cameras off of the gimbal. Panasonic has really good battery life, so I'm not too worried about it, but they do have dummy batteries to power your cameras off of the gimbal itself. Alright, really nice hard case here. And let's take a look inside. A couple of instructions telling you to mount and secure your camera, balance the gimbal, and charge the battery. These are instructions and some specifications on the gimbal. It says it can hold up to 1,800 grams. It's kind of a small gimbal, but I'm surprised that it does support like a decent Sony A7S kind of setup with a decent lens for such a small kind of single hand gimbal. And at the show they had that running all day, so there was no problems with that. They have a battery charger here. This is the tripod. As you know, the single hand gimbals need to stand up while you're balancing it, so they include this little tripod over here. The balance plate or QR plate handle here, which includes 3 batteries. These batteries are 26 350s. We've got the main gimbal head over here, little remote. Now this is the remote I was talking about. As you move it, you can control the gimbal just by moving this around. In the bag here, there's a couple of different cables. This is a kind of a lens support. You put this on the front end of the gimbal. And what that does is it prevents your cameras from kind of twisting on the plate or to support like longer lenses. And these are some cables to control your cameras from the gimbal. Here we have a USB control for Sony A series. Another mini USB, probably for Sony, and here we have kind of a shutter trigger here for Panasonic. So you connect this via USB to the gimbal, and then through the remote here we can actually start and stop video on our cameras, so we don't have to touch the cameras once we have this all set up. So let's go ahead and set this up. Alright, with a single hand gimbal, you always start with the tripod. Mount the handle at the bottom here so we can get this standing up. We've already dropped the batteries in here the right way, so we just have to screw this on the top. There you go. So if we want to get the dual handles on here, I like to flip my handles upward when I'm operating. I'll show you that. So we're just going to clamp this around, and then I'll show you how it works. It just folds over here, and turn this knob to clamp it down and secure it. Pretty easy. Afterwards, we have a remote bracket, so we put the remote on here. Now you'll notice that I have my handles kind of pointing upwards, which is, I guess, upside down. So I mounted the remote upside down as well, just to get access to the start and stop button here while I'm holding it, so I can start and stop video on the Panasonic. So we've got a USB port at the bottom of the tilt motor, so we plug this in here, and that would go right to the side of our Panasonic camera. And the final piece is to get our camera on here, so let's go ahead and set that up. Now again, we're going to attach the shutter cable to the side of this Panasonic here so we can control the video. So we just plug this in right here. Hopefully this works out well and it still fits. Now we're going to go through our typical balance setup here. Normally what I start with is maybe the roll. So I would loosen this up here. This is the roll, and what we're trying to do is just keep it so that it doesn't fall either to the left or to the right. We're not too worried about how that camera is positioned, just so it doesn't fall left or right now. Once we get the roll set up, we're going to point the lens upward, and we're going to work on balancing it this way. So what we're trying to do is to keep the lens pointing upward, and we're just going to slide this bracket forward and back until the lens is pointing upward. So we have that pointing up, and that's okay. We don't have this going left and right. Now we're going to point the lens forward, and we're going to slide this forward and back until we get it balanced just right. There you go. Pretty quick and easy. The last thing is the yaw. So they're underneath here, there's a clamp, and what we're going to do is we're going to tilt this sideways, and you notice how it wants to fall towards the camera. So we're going to pull this back so that it doesn't fall towards the camera. So we're sliding the yaw back as far as we can. And you'll notice now, if I'm holding it sideways, it's getting better. So just a little bit more. There you go. So we're balanced on the yaw as well. And we're ready to go. So to power this guy up, there's a button under the handle over here. So we're just going to press this button. That's powered up. You can see that we have no follow on the tilt. So the camera's always pointing forward. It does follow on the pan. That's mode 1. If we press the joystick twice, then it follows on the pan and as well as the tilt. So you notice now the camera's pointing downwards, so it'll follow on the tilt. Then there's mode 3. Mode 3 will lock the pan, so you notice it's not panning and it's not tilting. So it's a lock kind of position mode. And then there's a fourth mode, and the fourth mode actually lets you roll the camera. So as I roll the camera, you'll notice that it is actually tilting the camera sideways. So that's a cool feature that a lot of the gimbals are implementing nowadays, and that gives you that little Dutch angle look. All right, we're not going to dive too deep into the menu, but I'll show you the remote here and the features that we have. So as you notice that the speed here says low, and there's a speed button over here, and that's basically how fast it reacts to your movement, how fast it follows. So if we press speed again, you'll see it says kind of medium. Press it again and it switches to high. So I like to keep it on low. And then if you want to change modes, right now you can see it says pitch, which means that only the pitch motor is going to respond. We press the option button. Now it says pitch and yaw. So that is kind of like your follow mode for both pan and tilt. If we press it again, it will say all lock, and that is a locking mode so that neither the pitch or the tilt will respond. It just kind of locks its heading. So if we press it again, it says roll. So this right here will allow you to roll the camera, and which is that Dutch angle. Here, this is just the panning, so the yaw left and right. It won't tilt. So that's the first option. And if we go into the menu by holding the option button down for a few seconds, you'll see we have a couple of different other options here, but the one that we want to look at is probably camera. So what you do is you use the joystick here, you go down to camera, and to select that, you swipe to the right. And now we have a couple of different cameras here, DSLR, EOS Cinema, we have Sony Alpha, and then GH. If I said it's Alpha, it'll say setting. If I go to GH, it will say setting. So we are now set for Panasonic GH cameras. Now, this remote will now start and stop video for Panasonic cameras like the GH4, GH5, and GH5S, because it's really just a wireless shutter trigger. So it uses the shutter port on the side of the Panasonic camera. So now I could start and stop video. To exit the menu, we got to swipe left. And we're going to swipe left again. Let's go back in again. And then down here, if we scroll a little bit more, you'll notice there's some other options here, calibration and follow, power settings. This is the one that is what we want to look for, is motion control. So motion control is where we would rotate the remote around and the gimbal will follow. And you don't need to touch any of the joysticks. You just physically move the remote around and it will follow. So to start that, we're going to swipe to the right. And then to start, we would swipe to the right. You'll notice if I tilt up, the lens will go up. If I tilt down, as well as turn right and turn left, it will follow the remote. You can also enable the roll. So if I was to rotate this, it would roll the camera. I don't have that enabled right now, but that is something that you could turn on if you wanted to actually control roll as well. Here I'm just controlling the pan and the tilt just by motioning the remote, and they say this can work up to 50 meters. exit out of motion control, we're going to swipe to the left. And we're back into normal position, and swipe to the left, and we exit all the way back to the beginning. So that's kind of a look at the Goodson Moza AirCross 3 gimbal. It's super lightweight. It's been the perfect gimbal for my smaller setups. I really don't see why you have to go with a bigger gimbal like the Crane 2 or the DJI Ronin S if you're always working with the smaller camera setups. Those gimbals are great, but they're just going to be added weight. The performance of this one has been rock solid. You see we're hanging out of cars. We have really strong winds. I have it at the end of a pole. We do a lot with this gimbal. Now, don't get me wrong, I have larger gimbals for my larger camera setups. I actually don't fly my A7R III with 2470 with this. I use larger gimbals for that, but for anything GH5, GH5S, it has always been this gimbal, and I use that camera quite a bit. But one thing that I love about this gimbal is how small it breaks down. Now, if you guys are familiar with the Crane gimbal especially, you cannot break it down too small. The handles come off very easily, very quickly, but as we remove this tripod base, when we take out the base here, it actually comes down this small. If you're familiar with the Crane 2, you can take the handle off, but it still has the battery compartment. So to pack that gimbal up, you have to have a big bag to get that gimbal in, whereas this one breaks down to literally smaller pieces here, so I can travel a lot easier with this. So again, it's been the perfect gimbal for the smaller cameras like the GH5S, and a couple of other people that you may know I work with have this gimbal now too, so check them out. I'll have some links below. So a lot of people have picked up on this because the GH5, GH5S, A6500, all of those smaller cameras are super popular. And again, instead of going with a bigger, heavier gimbal for those smaller cameras, this right here has been rock solid performance, and a lot of people have turned on to this now after using it with me. If you guys are interested in this, I'm going to have a link below this video and also on the blog, cheesycam.com.